It is exciting. It's definitely an interesting project. And there's another opportunity for one of these as well. So I think let's see how this first one pans out.
That is Alexander Buckridge, an architect based in NYC that is in the process of starting his own architecture firm. And if you've ever felt unsure about exactly how to win new clients and give your firm the best chance, then you don't want to miss this. We'll dive into a distillery project that Alexander is trying to win right now.
They would like me to send on the latest and greatest deck of what I'm doing and get me in the mix.
Then we discuss how to prep for an upcoming meeting with a big NYC developer.
Going back to your last point about the smaller scale, is like there's a bit more intimacy, there's a bit more trust and all that stuff that you're going to bring to the table.
And we end by covering how much time and consistency architects should devote to business development.
They're not going to turn up trumps in this week, next week, the following week, but there's the payoff coming down the line.
Hey, I'm Tyler Suomala, founder of Growthitect. After nearly a decade in architecture, I shifted my focus to helping architects grow their business. Since then, I've spent the last few years helping architects just like you improve their sales, marketing, and business development through my free newsletter read by thousands of architects each week. But I wanted to take it a step further. That's why I started this podcast. It's not your typical interview series. Actually, for the whole first season of the Growthitect podcast, all 10 episodes, I'm sharing exclusive recordings of my consultations with Alexander Buckridge as he embarks on the journey of launching his own firm and landing his first clients. So tune in to learn exactly how to tackle the real challenges that every architect faces when starting out. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. But before we begin, a huge thanks to our sponsor, Gelt. Discover how Gelt can help to manage and optimize taxes for you, your firm, and your partners. Visit joingelt.com/growthitect to learn more. And now, here's the show.
Yeah, let's talk about the distillery for a minute, just because it's a conversation that's been ongoing for roughly about 18 months. And now it's been a situation of awaiting funding, but the project is probably like 40 minutes outside of Dublin. It's a large old mill building with a huge renovation to the front of it. It's an extension that's been completed, and that's actually the distillery itself for the production, because that has to go first. It's quite interesting. And now they're talking about more of the hospitality, more of the tourism side of it. It's a big thing, probably visited the site 18 months ago, and, it was awesome. It was really nice to see the building itself, the extension completed, and then what they were planning to do with the rest of it, which is this old stone structure, 5 stories. Yeah, really, really nice building potential. So they were talking about offices, they were talking about having like artists retreat there and stuff and different things like that. It's quite a creative hub they're seeing it as with whiskey. So anyway, there was a lot of alignment with what I thought myself I was interested in. I was always passionate, and I'm passionate about building back in Ireland and what I've learned throughout the last 10 decades, implementing and putting boots on the ground there to get stuff built. And yeah, so that's how all those conversations started. Recently, I had on Wednesday a conversation that the funding had now come in for this second phase, because ultimately it's a second phase, and that they would like me to send on the latest and greatest deck of what I'm doing and get me in the mix. Now, obviously, I'm a startup. This is building itself is significant. And so what I want to do is position myself where I can get some scope. There's endless opportunities within this complex, let's say, ultimately is what it is.
Yeah.
I want to talk about best way to approach here, because I will just go through what you would say. If someone says, hey, could you send me over your latest and greatest? You send it over, it goes into some kind of a void that then goes through another void, and then you may never hear again. So I'm not saying this is exactly what will happen here, but again, if we want to talk about how to do sales and negotiating and all that kind of stuff, there is an approach to take that is much more opportunistic and puts you in a better positioning than the latter of sending it via email and praying that an email comes in saying you have been chosen. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yes. That's so true. Okay. So I know that I think you had mentioned to me before that you have a relationship with the director there, or one of the directors there. So you know them?
And to be honest with you, the two of the main guys there, I would meet up when I go back to Ireland and get a coffee with, get a beer with.
Okay.
There's definitely a friendly relationship there.
So the first thing that you want to do is gather as much information as possible. And if I were you, the way that I would do that is I would try to jump on the phone with those two friends that you have in Dublin or in Ireland that are directors or at least directly associated with that project.
Yeah.
And I'll just try to get a sense for that scope that they have. Like you said, like you just want some scope. Obviously, you're not going to get the full scope because you're a startup, you're just one person. But if you were involved, I think you want to try to figure out exactly which avenue is most realistic for you to become involved. Is that through the interiors? Is that through just one floor or something that they're doing on? So I would open up that conversation and be like, hey, I saw your email. I saw that you guys are looking for this. I'm really curious to learn more about exactly what it is that you're looking to do and how I can potentially help. You just have a few minutes to answer some questions and then say, what are you looking for? How many people are you planning on hiring? Are you just looking for one firm to do it? Are you going to be hiring like a few different people to help? Because if that's the case, if they say we're just looking for one firm, then the next question might be, oh, okay, like who else have you reached out to help with that? Or who else are you asking to submit? Because then if I were you, I would actually go directly to those firms and say, hey, so-and-so also asked me to submit something. I'm not yet large enough to take this project on myself, but I would really love to help. I have a lot of roots in this. I'm really emotionally attached to what's happening here. Is there any way that we can collaborate or that I can help you with this as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
First, it's just gathering as much information as possible. If they're looking for something finished in 4 weeks, then I might say something like, before I submit this whole thing in a few weeks, do you have some time next week for me to walk you through what I'm thinking? Like, get in front of them as much as possible.
So you would say first, just jump on a call to clarify scope, just overall direction they're heading, a bit of more of an update from probably like previous conversation.
Almost like a discovery. Like what are what challenges have you faced? What's the outcome that you're hoping for? What's the scope look like? How many people do you plan on hiring? How large is this project? Getting a sense, I think, for those things would be really great. And then the second part of that is trying to set up another meeting where you can get feedback on what you're thinking and the way that you're understanding. So you can even frame it that way. Like, do you mind if we schedule some time in a couple of weeks to make sure that I'm understanding everything correctly and show you what I've come up with?
What would you call that second call as a headline?
A check-in. You could call it like something really casual like that.
A check-in on, not a proposal per se. I know that's getting a bit too granular, but it is like you're drafting out kind of the bones.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is the way that I was understanding what you were saying, because it's just meant to be a short call, right? Because you're just meeting with the people that you know directly, but there's a larger group of stakeholders, right? So you're just trying to meet with those people, because ultimately, to me, what those two people are is that they are your champions in this, right? Assuming that you have some kind of relationship. And so you really want to warm and lean into those relationships that you already have, so that when they are part of that stakeholder decision-making process, they can go to bat for you and they can say, hey, we've met with him a couple of times. He's really interested. He's super invested. He has an emotional attachment to this. And I think it's something that he would do really great at. And if I were you, I would lean heavily into that story, even when you do put together the full deck, like even if it's starting with a picture of you as a kid in the area or something. I think it's okay to be upfront. Like, this is my dream project. Yeah. So it's like, this means a lot to me for these reasons. And I think I have a lot to offer here. And I want to take, almost like you were just saying it to me, I want to take everything that I've learned from all over the world and bring it back to my hometown. So I think there's definitely a storyline in there that is really powerful. You have an emotional tie to it that I think could be used really well.
Yeah, I like that. So we're looking at a kind of a light discovery call, like an updated one, and then a check-in after that with what my findings are, my understandings are. Then I think after that, you share where you've got to, assuming that we're all there, where I'm in the mix, etc., and you take it from there ultimately.
Yes, exactly. And hopefully they give you an opportunity to present that proposal to them in some
because I know we touched
but
on
that's why
before.
just in case they can't, I think that's why it's really good to try to create those champion relationships with the two that you already know and just try to touch base with them as much as possible and make them almost feel invested and involved in your own proposal. Yeah,
that's great. I think I'm gonna go through those steps and let's see where it gets to. Because
that sounds exciting.
It is exciting. It's definitely an interesting project. And there's another opportunity for one of these as well. So I think let's see how this first one pans out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, architects, how much of your hard-earned money is getting captured by taxes each year? Probably too much. Here's the problem. Taxes are complicated, ever-changing, and frankly, they just give me a headache, which is why I joined Gelt earlier this year. Gelt provides tax solutions tailored to businesses and individuals just like you and your architecture firm. Their seamless integration of business and personal taxes ensures that your tax strategy is fully optimized. On my first call with the Gelt team, they shared tens of thousands of dollars worth of extra deductions that I can take this year, and I was completely blown away. When you join Gelt, you get your own team of tax advisors that understand your unique challenges, plus access to the Gelt platform, which makes managing your taxes easy and worry-free. Frankly, it's just been a huge weight off my shoulders since I joined Gelt. And Gelt loves architects so much that they're providing an exclusive offer of 10% off your first year just for Growthitect listeners. So visit joingelt.com/growthitect to rest assured knowing that your taxes are taken care of. That's joingelt.com/growth, to claim your 10% off. And now, back to the show.
Okay, and then the other thing I want to discuss was another conversation that I had this week with a developer in the city. It's the head of their design team there. They're called RXR. And what they want to do is, how we met was through Syracuse. I was on a kind of a professional practice board thing that we were sharing with the students about what it's like after you go into the workforce, etc., and the reality of it, and much more the nuts and bolts of business and architecture. And they were also on it. So just a bit of context as well.
Oh,
It's
that's
helpful
cool.
because,
Okay, great.
there's a bit of crossover then. So then I spoke a bit about the work I'd been doing. They were speaking a bit much on a higher level about they've got the contractors, they have the real estate. It's all in-house, which is quite interesting. It's the architecture. It's all one umbrella. And so we were talking at different scales, but facing similar issues. So afterwards, I kept in touch with someone, invited them to a going away party. Then we grabbed a coffee when I just got back from my trips in Europe. And that conversation concluded with seeing the first opportunity for me would be to work on some marketing activations and some of their developments. From my understanding of work I've done previously, that would look like setting up, whether it's an office space, whether it's a retail space, a residential space, for potential tenants, and bringing in design that gets people excited, that gets people visualize this could be something special, or it could be somewhere I could position my company, I could position my family. And in New York City in particular, there's a big demand and you need to make a bigger effort to entice people. So I sent a message back on LinkedIn to her just to summarize my understanding of the conversation of what she was wanting from me in particular in terms of showing examples of that I've done, which I have from working previously at my previous firm. We've done stuff like that, and potentially other things that would speak to that. And what was interesting was, as I was thinking about it, there's within these activations that they can be permanent and they can be pop-up kind of things. It's essentially you do a light activation, a medium, and I think it's called a full one. And what that looks like is the light version would be a sculptural piece, or it could be just like lighting. It's a lighter kind of touch with a smaller budget. It's all more capital orientated. The medium would be a bit more immersive. It could be one space, and then the full is just the entire floor. So you're looking at different packages, which I think is interesting again as well to adapt to what the building has and what the budget, I guess, ultimately they have either. So the idea would be to go in 2 weeks and meet with the rest of their team, which is a great opportunity to meet with the rest of, she's going to introduce me to the other team members, etc. And then to just share and present those kind of relevant projects that I've done previously, and for us to find somewhere to kick off with things.
Cool. That's awesome. All right, so let's talk about what's really great here is that the whole reason that this happened is because you both had some kind of commonality, right, on this ProPrac board at Syracuse.
Yeah, that's right.
You maintained a relationship with them, and you continue to touch base. You can continue to keep your foot in the door, and then that turns into a potential opportunity. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it is awesome.
That's exactly how things tend to work. That's how things should happen. It takes some time to warm these things up, but then opportunities come from it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think what's great as well is that when you get that, you two people just have the good kind of rapport and feeling of one another, then it flows obviously much more better, and it makes more sense.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And so in a couple of weeks, you're going to go present there. And my question would be, and it's really great that it sounds like you had a discussion and it ended with her being like, we'd love to see what you've done with other things and how that could impact us. You're going to go and meet the team. You
Yeah.
even sent an email following up to just make sure that you were understanding. It sounds like to make sure you were understanding the scope.
Yeah. And also to know, am I missing anything? Is there anything else I should be aware of?
Yep. And so going into that meeting, right? So one, you already know, like you're going to be pulling together examples of that are relevant to them,
Yeah.
which I think is really good. I'd also be thinking about what is the top level priority that they have, whether she told you that or not, or whether you're getting a sense for maybe their top priority is to get tenants, for example. That's the whole goal of this space. Then the frame with which you want to be presenting that proposal from everything, right? It is almost like a capital conversation saying this is how this is going to make someone feel this way. And so
Yeah.
thus they're going to be more likely to do what you want them to do. And so anytime that you can frame it that way is important. And then also maybe in that conversation, and I know we discussed this last time, is thinking about what objections do you already anticipate? And I think that's important too, because you can address those when you're presenting to them and when you're meeting with them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if she mentioned you're just getting started or you're potentially like you're kind of small. And so you can just address that and be upfront about it right from the beginning. You can say your background, right? Like, hey, I am starting my own practice now. I'm coming from something like more than 10 years of experience doing exactly what it is that you're looking to do. I have all of the partnerships and I have the network in place to make sure that these can be executed well.
Yeah. And also for me in particular, there's truth to the matter of I'm also looking to build my relationships and partnerships right now with whether it is RXR or it could be another developer,
Yes.
i.e. we've worked with Chipotle before, I've worked with other developers. And so for me, if we're building a relationship that feels good, I'm also saying that, yeah, going back to your last point about the smaller scale is like, there's a bit more intimacy, there's a bit more trust and all that stuff that you're going to bring to the table, plus a handful of contractors ready to go.
That's right. Yeah. You use a little bit of FOMO when you're meeting with them to say, I am starting out and I'm also looking for long-term relationships with
Yeah.
developers that are looking for a more intimate relationship, that are looking to be more involved in the process and want someone that can acutely understand exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that's good because then it also puts them, they're, oh, okay, I'm listening now because I want to be, if Alexander is great, if Studio Bucky is what we're
Yeah.
looking for, then I want to make sure that we are one of those relationships that he has moving forward. So I think that's great. And then the other thing is just taking whatever those challenges are, whatever those priorities are that you did hear from her when you were meeting with her and making sure that you're mapping those back in the presentation as well. So it's, I don't know what her name is, but you know, when Cindy and I met for coffee a couple of weeks ago, she mentioned this was something that you're focused on. Here's exactly how I've done that with another project. You're reintroducing everything that she said to you, showing that you were listening very actively and that you've been very intentional about the examples that you're using.
Yeah, that does. The deck is going to be directly taken over from the website in terms of translating the kind of look and feel so that I have
Cool.
this baseline one to run with. Let's see. I'm excited to just pursue these avenues and go through each door and these hurdles that you're running. And it's like you jump one and it's like, oh, okay, so now we're on to the next stretch.
Yeah.
You hit the next one and you're like, what do I got to do to jump over this one? As you said, I got to state back to them what you heard. You got to list out this and this and then this. And yeah, it becomes then like next thing.
Yeah. I think what's really great about, I think it's challenging for you right now because again, the ideal scenario is
Thank
that you are doing, yeah, but you're doing like you're doing one type of project with one type of client and then you can do it. And so that process then stays the same. But obviously for you, and I can tell you're excited by it. It's really interesting that since you're being a little bit more open to the types of projects that you can take on, it's leading you down a different like business development cycle and process with each one,
Yeah,
which is really interesting. So you're getting the full exposure of working with a larger firm, working with smaller firms, working with individuals, trying to do these different things. And so eventually after, if you imagine you haven't even formally launched yet. So if you imagine like a year down the road, great exposure to all of these different things, and you'll have a process for each one. You'll have a process for when you're meeting with developers. You'll have a process for when you're meeting with individuals about their project. And I think that's just going to pay a ton of dividends down the road.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. It's like a lot of things I'm saying to myself right now is like these initial conversations I'm having with certain people or these connections that I'm building. And I've had other conversations I haven't got into this week, but they're not going to turn up trumps this week, next week, the following week. But there's a payoff coming down the line. There's months, there's years. We talk about that, the distillery situation.
These are long-term plays. And I think that's where architects make usually the biggest mistake, right? Is that they might be focused on getting one project and they get that one big project. And then what happens, like 3 months into the project, they realize, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of money in 3 months unless we go get another project. But it takes 3 months to develop the relationships to potentially get a project and get something in the door. And so
absolutely.
as long as you're keeping that consistent, right? You're spending, after you start getting projects, like you're going to want to spend probably still at least like 20% of your time doing business development, focusing on relationships, going out and doing things that might not have the immediate impact of getting an opportunity right now, but keeping all the other things warm so that in 6 months, in 12 months, and 18 months, you have a really healthy pipeline of relationships that you can fall back on.
Yeah. That's really important to understand that. And I came up recently with my financial advisor. We just had an annual check-in, and he actually brought that up, which is quite interesting. Also in the service game, where he said to me that, what's going to happen with you? And it was quite interesting. It was like, you're going to get, stuff's going to start moving very quickly. They're all going to move at the same pace. There's going to be 2 or 3 projects just moving along, and you'll get through them in 12 months' time, and you'll get there. And if you're not doing still that 20% of business development of meeting people pipeline, you're going to come out into a void of nothing. And you're going to be like, oh, that was great. That was fun in 12 months, but where am I going now? But it was so interesting that you see that feedback on just an annual check-in.
That's awesome. I love that the financial advisor becomes a business development consultant, but they're exactly right, because I'm sure that he sees it all of the time, to his point. Like, he's got to see this. People starting their business, they start a service business, they get the work that they need, and they take their feet off of the accelerator. And as a result, they're done after they finish those few projects. They don't have anything else in the pipeline. And
that's it. And I think another interesting...
It's the hardest part. It's the hardest part of you running a business. Right.
It is, because you've got to keep that portion.
You have to keep up quality and control and execution of the projects that you're getting, but then you also have to maintain the pipeline of everything else that you're going to get moving forward.
Yeah.
And without walking that line, you don't have a sustainable business.
Yeah. So it's good to be aware of all this, out of the gates.
Yeah.
So that I can divide my time up as best possible. With these potential, I mean, there's a bit there to figure out. I think I just want to make sure I'm putting myself in the best possible position each time. And make sure that I give them a real reason to not take me on.
Exactly. I think they're both going to be learning experiences. It seems hopefully there's good things that should come out of them, but to your point, like putting yourself in the best position, I think is just about gathering as much information as possible about what it is that they need. And also leaning on your differentiator, which for you is that you're just starting. You're one person. And so you're leaning into those personal relationships that you've already built with these people and using that to kind of wiggle your way into these different situations and scenarios. I think
that sounds good.
If you continue to do that, like, you're going to at least get the right clients for you right now, because obviously this conversation will be different in a year. You might have a few different people that are helping you or something like that. All right. Thanks for being a Growthitect and listening in on this consultation with Alexander Buckridge. Be sure to subscribe so you can continue to learn exactly how to overcome the challenges that every architect faces when starting a firm. Check out the show notes for links to everything that was mentioned. Lastly, make sure you go to growthitect.com/join to join more than 5,000 architects getting one quick and simple business growth hack in their inbox every Sunday morning from me. I'll see you in the next episode.